Our next segment is going to be for professional development. And the first person I'll introduce is Nael. Nael Spicer. So Nael Spicer is an HR and recruiting professional with over 8 years of experience supporting candidates through every stage of corporate hiring process. Since 2019, she's worked with Fortune 500 companies, including JP Morgan Chase and Capital One, specializing in interview coaching, resume strategy, and offering stage support. She is also a business owner who enjoys blending corporate expertise with creativity and entrepreneurship. The next person I'll introduce is Greg Nicholson. He is born and raised in Philly. He is a graduate of Howard University School of Business and a member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. He is a seasoned sales leader with over 30 years of experience in multiple sales and marketing roles with consumer and pharmaceutical companies. He is known for strategy development, which drives business growth and builds strong teams. Outside of that, he is a member of Seed since 2002 and currently serves as the co-director of the Seedlings Ministry. He also is the creator and host of MBK Lounge, a podcast dedicated to helping men reach their full potential and fulfill their God-given purpose. He is husband to Lisa Nicholson for over 30 years and father of 3, Malik, Micah, and Zaire. His life mission is to inspire others to lead with purpose, love others deeply, and use your God-given gifts to make a lasting impact on others. Next, I'll introduce Pamela Ridgeway. She is a proud Philadelphia native who has called Delaware home for over 15 years, with 7 of those as a member of Seeds. She's a graduate of Temple University and St. Joseph's University and has worked in the human resource field for almost 30 years. She has served in various capacities with human resources, with her most recent experience being with Christiana Care for the last 12 years, and she currently serves as a Chief Belonging Officer and Vice President of Talent. She is a proud mother of a 13-year-old son who she thanks God for daily, even on the hard days. Finally, I want to introduce Julius A. Walker, Sr., JW. He is a seasoned business owner and senior leader with a proven history of building relationships, leading teams, and fulfilling commitments. Throughout his career, he has led expanding organizations, managed multi-million-dollar client portfolios, and collaborated closely with individuals from diverse backgrounds in the United States and globally. Julius holds a Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering and a Bachelor of Science in Music Engineering Technology from Hampton University. Earlier in his career, he held regional sales and engineering positions that enabled him to partner with universities, healthcare institutions, and corporate clients across US, Canada, and beyond. Though Julius currently serves as principal and co-owner of Epic Tech Group, he has grown multiple businesses for over 15 years. In his current role at Epic Tech, a company he helped establish from the ground up, he manages daily operations, strategy, client relationships, and ensuring his team consistently provides exceptional service. Outside of his professional pursuits, Julius values integrity, respect, and community. He enjoys cultivating long-term relationships, mentoring others, and contributing to environments where courtesy, tradition, and fellowship matter. And to note, everything that you see here, audio, visuals, live stream, everything here is because of JW. So to start off, the first question I would ask our panelists is, when it comes to your career and just over the years, what is one thing that has helped guide you through all of that? Because as you guys all heard, their resumes, their experiences are extensive. These are people who've excelled in their field of work, but also outside. So I would love to hear, like, what is one thing that has kept you going throughout your career?
So for me, starting out, at the end of the day, is being God as the center of everything you do, which is like cliche because every time somebody gets an award, they say, I want to thank God, right? But like, I think the more you like insert him into your heart, it hits the rest of your body. So I say the biggest thing is making sure that you have a relationship with him for yourself so you know how to move inside of your professional career. And I think that's the first basis for me in corporate and everything that I've done is making sure that my relationship with him is right, because as I move in integrity and everything like that, I have accountability to somebody outside of myself. And it just helps you develop as an individual. So when you're going for a job, you're making sure that you're giving 100% in that job, not because your boss told you to, because you asked God for the blessing of the job, and now you're fulfilling what he gave you as a blessing. So that's what I say my route would be.
I can jump in as well. Plus one to JW. But one thing that keeps me going, especially in the corporate world, I would say competing with myself. Like, you always want to elevate, you always want to do better, but I'm not really looking at my peer, I'm not looking at my colleague, I'm not looking at my boss. I'm looking at myself, what I've accomplished so far, and like wanting to be better and wanting to do better. So I would say just being better than who I was yesterday, being better than who I was last year, and looking how far I come. And when I'm too comfortable, I feel like it's time for a change, because I don't believe that I'm necessarily growing when I'm in a comfortable place for too long.
And for me, I've always identified my non-negotiables and what it is that I'm interested in. So I find that, like, so for me, I have, like I said, a 13-year-old. And when I moved to Christiana Care, he was 1. And I remember very clearly saying, I don't have anybody. So I don't want a job that's X, Y, and Z. This is what's important to me. And so that's really important. A lot of times I see people go into spaces and they're competing, not with themselves, like what you said, but they're competing with the image of what they think they should be doing. So people go into management because everybody who's not a manager thinks they want to be a manager, right? And then when they get into it, they're like, so wait, I have to do this, I have to do that. And so I always spend time figuring out, before I identify something based off of other people's rubric, what exactly is that job, and is it something I want?
I'm going to add, I actually have 2, but I'm only going to speak to one. Hopefully the other one will come out later. I think for me, it's about operating in the next role that you aspire to be. A lot of times people get caught up in just their tasks, just what they're responsible for. And one of the reasons why I've been able to experience other things within my role, get special projects, be able to lead certain things, is because I always wanted to know as much as I possibly could about the environment that I'm in, the customers that I'm serving. We talk about patient journeys in my business. We talk about how physicians make decisions. There's a lot of people that I work with. So I always wanted to demonstrate that I wasn't just really good at what I'm currently doing, but I figured out ways to be able to demonstrate how what I'm doing now can be escalated to that next role that I'm interested in.
Thank you so much. So first we'll have JW speak, and then at the end we'll have the Q&A. You have
So for me, just to give you history, I graduated from Hampton University, the real HU. For all the people on Howard, it's just a party school. But came out of Hampton. Graduated in 06, and immediately went into corporate America. Worked over at the University of Penn as an IT specialist for them. About 9 months in, I got a phone call from a company that I'd never applied for, saying that they wanted to interview me, which was like really weird. But went to the interview. They loved me. It was about 9 employees, a startup tech company. And sat with them. But throughout that whole journey, throughout college, I had a lot of things. Being raised in Philadelphia is, I don't know how many people from Philly. Yeah, but you know, there's a lot of distraction that could happen. And some of them did happen. So just being able to stay locked in. So when I went there, I went to the company. I've always kind of had like an entrepreneurial spirit. But while I was there, you know, and we were just talking about it in the back room, which I'll touch on later. It's not always bad, in my opinion, to have a 9 to 5. Everybody is not supposed to be an entrepreneur. You can also be an entrepreneur, which means you make a lot of money in somebody else's company, right? So I just want to start out with that part, right? So when I first started out with this company, I grew the ladder. I came in as a design engineer for building medical simulation centers across the world. And throughout that process, about 2 years in, the South region became available from a sales standpoint. So I went into the VP office and I asked for the position. And the first thing he told me was, at that point I was probably like 24, 25. He said, "You're young, black, and they won't take you serious." So for me, I personally, it doesn't bother me when people say that. It just puts me on 1,000% at that point, right? So I realized that I was closing deals for people, but I wasn't getting the commission properly for it, right? So as you guys are pivoting your career and life, just because somebody doesn't open the door, you make them, right? So as I was going through my career, I made them open this door. The West Coast opened up, and I knocked on the door again, and I said, I want that territory. The territory was doing about $250,000 a year, which was low out of a $20 million company at that point. So the door opened up, and pretty much what they did again, the other salespeople were at 3%. They put me at 1.5, right? So it's okay. So 6 months in, closed $2.2 million in sales personally. I went back to the CEO's office, knocked on the door. I said I want $40,000 more on my commission, and I want on my base, and I want 4%. Right? Because this is what I like. And how many minutes I have? Oh, I have 11 minutes. Okay. Yep. So this is what I tell everybody is we sit in church and we talk about the abundance of God, right? But the abundance is already here. The reasons why we don't have it is because of our choices. Right? So I made the choice to take what was already mine from that age at 26, 27. So you know what the next thing is to do is to create the story that he could talk about, right? God could talk about, hey, his son got the opportunity, we blessed. So I'm like, I told my wife at that point that I'm going to be the top guy by the time I leave. So within the next year, closed about $5-6 million in sales. The following year, almost 10 by myself. And then next thing you know, hey, Julius, I think you're doing very well in the company. We want to put like 6 guys under you in your territory because I handle all the West Coast, right? So you're starting to say it's like, hey, when you become good, you get over leveraged, right? So it's nothing wrong with that, but you just have to create the plan while that's happening, right? So I, in my mind, was like, hey, let me do what they're doing to me, to them. I'm going to get every certification possible. I'm going to learn how to close deals. I'm going to learn HR. I'm going to learn project management. I'm going to learn all the fields on their dime, right? Because I knew what my extra strategy was going to be, which wasn't 6 months, because we just had this conversation, the generation, as an entrepreneur, I'm more of a counselor than anything, because people like to have jobs for 3 months and leave to the next job and leave to the next job. You know, for us, I was taught you got to stay on the job at least 5 years. 7 years is kind of good. 5 years, the next job will look at it bad if you leave in 3, right? So throughout that whole process, I was just building, I was building. And then we got to a point where my territory alone was doing $12 million a year. We were the highest ranking territory. So they knock on the door and say, hey, Julius, you're doing so well. The VP that said I was young, black, and wouldn't take me serious, I was like his right hand. I was making him look so good. He was hitting all his numbers, but I was okay with that, right? Because that's between him and God. I'm going to make my money, right? So that's what in your mind as y'all moving forward in life, you have to say 2 things. You have your relationship with God because you're in a great church. But you got to come in your mind is like, no matter what anybody's doing to me, I'm going to make my money, right? I'm going to get what I can get out of the opportunity and stay non-distracted from all the distractions. You just got to move. Because in my opinion, corporate America is a great tool for you to figure out what you're good in and what you're not good in before you go into entrepreneurship, and your bank account will tell you what you're good and not good in, right? So as we develop in that, traveled up that ladder, got to like a really high point, and then they say, hey, you're doing so well. Let me give you Asia Pacific Rim. So that means like all of Hong Kong, Singapore, Middle East, all those areas. So next thing you know, 16-hour flights come in. I'm in the middle of Dubai closing deals with Sheikh Mohammed across the table with me, which is the head of Dubai, closing deals. So sitting there, and at that point, I'm 27, 28 years old from being told that I'm young, black, and wouldn't take me serious, right? So this is all what I'm saying is we cannot let people put our worth on us. We have to put our worth on them, right? So during that whole time, we start negotiating again. So I go back and I'm saying, hey, I need a little bit more. Because I knew a little bit more because the 3 other competitors already started reaching out, right? So what I'm saying to you guys is not just about me. I'm just giving you the formula. If you're in corporate America, don't feel like you have to move because social media is telling you if you're not an entrepreneur, you don't have your freedom, right? Because in entrepreneurship, when you're starting, you're not free. Like 20-hour days and 16-hour days are real things, 7 days a week, right? So that's what you think of. So we got to a point, I have 7 minutes. We got to a point where I decided, hey, I was on a flight to San Francisco. My son got sick. He had a seizure. My in-laws called me. I got off the plane. I was in the hospital with him. My VP called me and said, hey, I heard your son got sick. It's okay, take care of your family. Around 3 o'clock, he had a seizure again. He called me and said, hey, did you find a flight out to San Francisco? So at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm only a number to them, right? Now, if I can close $30 million in 3 years for that company, what can I do for myself? So at that age, I was 27, 28, making around $300,000, $400,000 a year, and I left corporate America. God told me to do it. He set the place up in place, but as soon as I left, my wife caught cancer. My wife got cancer, right? So it went from having over $180,000, $200,000 saved in the bank to exhausting that to pay cancer bills. Because if you've ever been through that road years ago, they only cover 60%. So we did 12 rounds of chemo, 12 rounds of radiation, and went through it. She didn't work for 3 years. We had a single family home when we were 26. So we went from that down to 17 cents in our bank account. She never even knew we were broke, right? So I done seen the top of the mountain to the lower part of the mountain, right? So it was that one night when my wife's hair fell out, right? I went in the closet and I cried because I'm like, God, I did everything you told me to do. Like, I know everybody's not always happy with God, right? So we look at him and say, like, I did everything supposed to do. Like, what's up? My bank account looks crazy. Like, I'm not getting the job I want. My business is not growing. But I heard him say, trust me, right? So I heard that. And ever since then, I locked in. That same day, my wife was going to Whole Foods because she's a very Whole Foodsy type person, right? You get me in Walmart and Costco's, I'll fill up for a month, right? So she goes there, and I'm like, please don't let her run this card. Somebody walks in our business and rents some equipment for us, $600. I had a partner at that time. He took $300, I took $300, ran right to the bank account, threw it in there. So we had $317. She swiped. Everything worked. So I just want to show y'all the levels of like where the process is, because sometimes you see entrepreneurship and perception is not always reality. I know a lot of folks on social media that do not make money. They make money because of a lot of people's ignorance in what they're trying to do. They've never built anything, right? So for me, I got a point. I had a partner at the time. Our first tax return was $184,000, right? When we were a partner for 7 years, we started out in seeds as partners, right? He was of another religion. He was Muslim. I was Christian. So like that side of it started to like really tackle. And I came from corporate, so I'm business structure. So I had to tell God, I'm like, hey, towards the end of our business, our annual revenue was around $3 million in total sales. I left again, right? Because God told me to do it, right? And my prayer was for me to build something with my wife and create that opportunity. The opportunity was me leaving my old partner and trusting God that it was going to happen. So that happened during the pandemic. When most people are trying to save their coins, we were spending. We put almost $200,000 into our building to get it ready out of our pockets. When most people are trying to be reserved, I'm like, yo, God told me to do it. Because at the end of the day, I'm not scared of anything. I've been broke before. My wife had cancer. I jumped out of corporate America, right? So if anybody's here trying to figure out the play, it's just talk to God for yourself. Because I've had a lot of people that have heard stuff from other people, and they never were supposed to be an entrepreneur. Because entrepreneurship is expensive. You either learn now or you learn later, right? So we jumped into Epic Tech. Our first year, we did what we did in sales our fourth year with my old partner. So my prayer, somebody came up to me, said, God is going to expedite what you're looking for quickly. Definitely did, right? So as we're looking as a business, we have multiple employees. We just finished up National Urban League's headquarters, the national chapter in Harlem. We were up there for 19 months, a multi-million-dollar AV project. So God will make room for you. You just have to listen and make the right choices, right? And don't give up, because a lot of people say, oh, people going to buy that product. You know how many AV companies are in here, around this area? People don't buy the product, they buy the person. You know? So the person means person of integrity, accountability. You don't always have to win on every deal. It's about relationship. Because at the end of the day, a relationship pays over time. You know, so as y'all building, you have to get yourself in. Sometimes people say, oh, I'm going to get in the room is I'm going to get in. Sometimes you get in the room, you ain't ready to be in that room. Because if you get in the room with me, I'm going to know you're not a shark. And you're going to lose the opportunity. But if you nurtured yourself and then you got into that room, social media is telling y'all, get in the room, be around that person. You don't have value to bring to me. Right? So, but the biggest thing is that God has already done the work. We just have to get out our own way, right? So he tells us to be a steward of our education, of our money, right? You can't start a business and have a 500 credit score. So get to a mid 800 as fast as possible. Because if you don't make over $15 million a year, you have to co-sign everything, right? So everybody's saying, I want to open up this business, I want to open this business. You need capital to do it. God will provide, but God's not going to put you in mess. Right? So as y'all thinking about what you're doing, sometimes you learn through somebody else's liabilities until you have time to get your own. Right? So as y'all building, and for me, I have a family right now. I told God what I want. Epic Tech's going to be a $100 million company. I know it. I told him what I want. I see the trajectory of getting there, and through all the opportunities we have, we're just going to get there. But at the end of the day is the more blessings that come in, the more we give. We're givers. So opportunities come our way. I'm not shocked because I've sowed the seeds 10 years ago. You know, this generation don't want to sow. They want immediate gratification. So y'all need to sow little seeds because your grandma did it. That's why you blessed now. Right? So one thing I do say is as you're building a business, I have 30 seconds left, is I said it on my last thing. Skill will only get you so far. Discipline will scale you. And another thing is that if you don't make a certain amount of money, you don't have a business, you have a hobby. And hobbies become expensive and it destroys your family. So get around somebody that has a successful business, because just because a person is married 30 years doesn't mean it's a great marriage. So don't listen to everybody. And the same thing in business. 27 can have been a living hell. Right? So, and then we said one other thing, I'm done now, but nothing's new under the sun. It's just a new generation.
Thank you so much for that, JW. Next, we're going to have Nyell speak. And we'll just go.
Hello, everyone. So that's going to be hard to follow. So I'm just going to tell y'all about my journey and hoping that I can drop a few gems just from things that I have learned as I've grown through my, I would say, employment history. It's my corporate journey. I didn't start out in corporate, so I'm going to take you to the beginning. I graduated from Temple University with my bachelor's degree in psychology, and then I went back to school and got my master's for human resource management. So when I graduated, my first big girl job was in a nonprofit world. I worked for Habitat for Humanity. And I feel like every place that I've worked at was aligning me and getting me ready for the next place. They literally have all been connected and all have been aligned. And one thing that I learned just from being here at Seeds is that when it's confusing, just pause where you are. But when it all kind of aligns and it makes sense, like you're doing the right thing, and that's what I can see when I look back over my journey in my employment. So working at Habitat, I had my bachelor's degree, but then I went back and I got my master's degree. But I didn't know where I wanted to go, like when I was at Habitat. Once I got my master's degree, I applied for higher education and I worked at Lincoln University. However, it was from my connection at Habitat for Humanity that I even got the job at Lincoln University. And I say that because I submitted my resume. And shout out to everyone who went and got their resumes looked at and hopefully got some really good, they helped you with editing it and making it stand out because that's really, really important. I applied to Lincoln University and the hiring manager, she looked over my resume and she passed me by. But someone I worked with at Habitat for Humanity, he was like, I think this would be a really great job for you. You're already doing this here. You can just do this in higher education. And I was like, well, I submitted my application. I turned in my resume, but no one called me back. He had a really good connection there. He reached out to the hiring manager. They're like, okay, I looked over her resume. It wasn't good. And then she was like, but I'll call her in for an interview. He helped edit my resume and kind of point out specific things that would attract that hiring manager to even want to talk to me. So saying that to say, like, having a really good resume really can help you get in the room. Like, that's really, really important because if you're not highlighting the responsibilities of the role or calling out certain things that that role needs, they're going to pass you by even if you're qualified. So I ended up getting the job at Lincoln University. I worked there for about a year and a half, and then from there, my skills that I gained there, my master's degree, that all helped me get into JP Morgan, which was my first place of being in the corporate environment. And my experience from Lincoln University is also something that helped me get into JP Morgan because when you think of the jobs that I had, I was an admissions counselor at Lincoln University, which is sort of like a recruiter, if you will. I got into the HR space as a recruiter at JP Morgan. And as an admissions counselor, we're trying to recruit applicants. We're trying to get high school seniors to come to our school. As a recruiter in the corporate world, we're trying to get the best qualified applicants and candidates to come and apply for this role and get into this seat in this position. So saying that to say it all kind of aligned and went together. So working at JP Morgan, which was my first time in the corporate space, it was completely different. And it was a bit scary. But I think that my experience from working at Lincoln University, working at Habitat, the connections that I made all prepared me for the seat that I was sitting in. And I want to admit and say at times I didn't feel qualified for the seat that I was in. And fear really did creep in my first time being in corporate America and being at JP Morgan, just feeling like I wasn't supposed to be in that seat. But just the foundation and everything that I built being, I want to say, in this church and being around the support system that I had really built me up for that space because it was times where I'm like thinking, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or I don't know how to do this, or like, you know, why am I deemed qualified? But I was already qualified for that seat. So just being built up with my community, which I think is really important. So saying these things to say, the community and the people that you have around you is really important because they'll help ground you and bring you back to surface of knowing, like, you know, when you're down on yourself, when you're not feeling your best, when you're thinking you're not qualified, they know you are. The Lord has already called us qualified. So saying all that to say, the community you have with you is really important when you're moving through the corporate world. When being at JP Morgan, I moved up one level there, but there was a time where I went to apply internally for other roles, and I didn't have the support of my leaders. I didn't have the support of my managers, and I felt like I was a bit blackballed. I felt like I was stagnant in the journey, and I couldn't take that next step because I was being held back by my superiors and my leaders. So I got in a dark place, and I felt like, you know, what am I doing here? Am I even supposed to be here? Should I be applying for another role? Should I be leaving this company? And what I had to realize was I had to do the work in excellence. I had to remember what I prayed for. I prayed for this job, and now I'm not happy in this job. I feel like I'm stuck in this job. I want to get out of here, but I don't know am I supposed to move? Like, I just was really confused, and I feel like when you do get confused, you kind of stay planted and go back to the beginning. Okay, why did I want this job? I prayed for this. Like, why did I want this? Let me just do the job and do what I'm doing really well. And then once I get grounded in that and I'm doing the job really well, then hopefully I'll hear from the Lord. Hopefully I'll know what my next step is. And I had to get back to that. And once I started doing my job in excellence, that's when I felt like I was led to apply for another role. And I feel like that's because at that time I was ready for the next step, because I remembered I prayed for this job, I'm doing this job in excellence, stop looking at all of the bad, just do your job, just take it one day at a time, and be okay where you are, be content. I had to enjoy the journey. I was in a rush to elevate, I was in a rush for a promotion, I was in a rush to get more, whether that was financially or do more, like I need more finances because this is what I want to do in my life. When I started doing my job in excellence and remembering what I prayed for and why I wanted this position is when other doors and new doors opened up for me. So I ended up leaving JP Morgan, and then I went to Capital One, brand new door. Went into Capital One, it was a whole new level, very exciting. But then I got to a place at Capital One where I got into a really dark place as well. And I would say it was some mistakes that I made on my end, and I got back into that dark feeling of feeling inadequate. Maybe I'm not qualified for this. I'm making the most money that I ever made. I don't even know if I have the credentials to be doing this. Really dark, really down on myself. But I had to take it back to, he calls me qualified. God calls me qualified. You pray for this job. He says that you can do this job. You believe in yourself. So I kind of went back to the basis of when I was at JP Morgan, like, okay, let me just do my job. Let me do my job in excellence. Let me take a step back. Let me regroup. Went back to those morals, and I started to feel better. I started to do better. I started getting the recognition. I was seeing others around me get the recognition, get the promotions. We started at the same time. We're doing the same things. When we look at the numbers, I'm hiring more candidates than this person. I'm getting better reviews from my clients, but I'm seeing everyone else elevate, promotion, getting the next level, and I'm just like, so I'm just doing something wrong. That dark space. However, got back to, I'm not doing this for them. I'm not doing it for their praise. I started to honestly idolize my job, if you will, and it wasn't but the Holy Spirit, once I got up out of that I realized that's what I was doing. And once I realized that the job isn't what I'm idolizing, like there's no idols. I serve the Lord, and I'm doing this unto him. This is his will. He put me in here for a purpose. Once I realized that and got back grounded in that, things started to, confusion going, dark place going, and it was aligned. So I say this, and I share my story of like my professional development and how I moved amongst like career to career or job to job, if you will, to say that enjoy the journey and enjoy where you are. When I look back, I see that I was in a rush. I was trying to speed up the process when I was going through something. I was being molded. I was being groomed. I was supposed to learn certain things in that area. And you remember that most of us probably prayed for the jobs that we have right now, and we just don't want them anymore. But remember why you prayed for them, because it's something you're supposed to get out of that. Like Miss Lori said earlier, like God's just cooking. He's cooking. He hasn't forgotten about you. You haven't been left for dead. Like, he has an end goal in mind, and I think it's just something that you need to learn and you need to grasp from the situation or the job that you're in at that time. And I feel like that's kind of like what's happening to me right now. Like I said, I got up out of that dark space, and I've had conversations with my manager, and we've had promotion talks, and we have things that are on the rise. But then it's like, I'm so happy I was able to kind of like go back to my foundation and get my head on straight, my feet back planted. I'm doing this job unto him, and as long as I do my job in excellence, he'll provide everything else. So, that's it for me.
So, while JW was talking, God said, I got something I need you to tell. And I said, no, I didn't prep for that. So I don't know what to do. I'll talk about that the next time I get invited. And we had a tussle in my head. And I remember the last thing that I said before I shut up in my head was I was like, I didn't plan for that. And his response was, I didn't ask you to plan, I asked you to let me lead. So what both of you talked about, especially when you got to the end and you talked about trying to rush things, right? What I really want to talk about is don't chase the money. And this isn't a conversation where I'll tell you money won't make you happy. While it won't, I know enough to know being poor makes you sad, right? So I don't want you to think that that's what I'm telling you to go for. But when we're going through this, one of the things that I think is important, and I'll talk about in hindsight, which I had never seen about my journey, I think a lot of the dissatisfaction that people feel in their professional space is because they have attributed a certain dollar amount to what will make them happy. And I promise you, because I've been there, that dollar amount will keep changing. And you actually will never hit you. And it doesn't matter if you're like, you'll get to a point where you're like, I didn't even think I'd get here. And you would still accept more if they gave it to you. So I remember when I did Temple undergraduate, and then I went to University of Maryland College Park for my master's. And when I came out, I went to go work for this job. And I remember coming out, and all these people around me, similar to what you were saying, right? We're all graduating. And this was a long time ago, right? And so when people are talking, I'm like, you're getting paid how much? Wait, you're getting paid what? And I had not a single job coming my way. And so as we're going through, I remember I got with this firm that no longer exists, AMS, and they were like, we'll hire you as an HR assistant. And I was like, you need a master's for that? And they were like, no. I was like, I got one of those. They were like, so you want the job or no? Like, we're just trying to figure out so we can make this offer. And I was like, yep, I'll take it. And so I took the job. I killed at that job. And it was in that moment, as I started moving around, I needed to take that job to get to where I am now. That job saw me. Forget the ego that came with everything else, right? That job saw me. And when I got in there and I started doing it, the tech bubble was about to burst. I wanted to go back home to Philly. And I started moving things all around. And ever since then, whenever someone gives me nuggets, I'm like, okay, it's that one. And when I say don't follow the money, doesn't mean you don't want it. What I'm saying is don't make it your God. And it easily becomes that way. So even when you were talking about like the sitting and being like, all right, I want to go. Sometimes what I see, and it's generational, so let's be clear, and it's even when I don't sit in spaces, and because of your generation, you may hear it. It's not about bashing generations, because let's be clear, my parents are boomers. They could not process me as an ex, and they still have a lot to say about that. And people will say it about millennials, they'll say it about Zs. We are all completely unique. None of us are the same. None of us are good. None of us are bad. Like, we just are, right? And so don't buy into however people are defining you, right? And the one thing that I often say is however people see millennials, y'all are ex's first cousins, so I don't necessarily count y'all. But, like, however people see Z's and beyond, we did it, right? And so what we really need to sit back is figure out why. And so I see a lot of times, especially when I'm looking at layoffs and stuff, right? People watch their parents get laid off regularly. And there was a point when there was this thing where it's like my parents, legit, the job they started when they got out of college, only job they ever had. And so when they would watch me move jobs, 5 to 7 years, like you said, when they would watch me move jobs, they were like, I don't understand. But I'm also watching the news where you're watching people cry, like, I've been here for 40 years, right? And so I genuinely believe whatever it is that you all go through as a generation or as generations, it's a byproduct of things that you've seen, right? So if people attempt to label you in a way that's disparaging, don't accept it. And so when I think about what we're going through here and what we're looking at, one thing that does happen is that job hopping is big with different generations. And when I have conversations, I remember we had somebody recently, she worked for 3 weeks and left a note and was like, it's a no for me. And I couldn't process what had just happened, right? But gone. That was it. She didn't care about being ineligible for rehire. She didn't care about any of that, right? And so that's a more extreme one, right? But one of the things that I see that happens a lot, which is why I believe the Lord laid this on my heart, is I've been in this job now for 9 months. What's next? There's a lot that's next, and it doesn't necessarily involve leaving that job. Have you truly given your all? And I don't mean blood, sweat, and tears. I don't mean you're not going to the gym. I don't mean you don't see your family. Have you brought everything that God has sown into you to your job? So even when you were talking about, like, the next job, so you want me to see you for the next job, but I've never seen you do the next job. I've never seen you actually study the next job, right? So there's work to be done. And I believe a big piece of that jumping is money. All money's not good money. I know you've heard it. I'm telling you, I've seen it. All money is not good money. So if you start jumping around, I've seen people that are like, I just want to be the manager because the manager got it easy and the manager can do whatever. And then I've seen them go into management, and I watch them go from being satisfied in their job, completely dissatisfied in their job. And I'm like, what's wrong? And they're like, I had no idea management was like this. I'm like, but you got the money. And they're like, I did. And I'm like, so now what we going to do? And I've seen people go from being leaders to coming in my office and asking me, was there a way that they could step back? And that's not a problem. And I actually find it to be quite admirable because they actually chose themselves. Because when you put ego aside, which is about the others, and you really say, this isn't what I want, that's fine. You know, I talked to my hairdresser the other day, and I was like, you're 37. You have your own business. You have this. You're killing it. And her response to me was, can we define killing it? And what I realized then is that's a big piece of what I encourage people to do, all of you to do. Before you decide what's next, or you're like, I don't feel professionally fulfilled, can you just define for me real quick, what does it mean to be professionally fulfilled? Because 9 times out of 10, and that's not an age thing, I believe I could talk to somebody who's about to retire. And I will say, did you feel professionally fulfilled? I mean, it was all right. I could pay the bills. I could do whatever. Right, can you just answer my question real quick? Right? And so when I'm like, did you feel professionally fulfilled? They can't answer that. So if there was one thing that I could pass on to everybody, it's define what professional fulfillment looks like to you. If it's about being able to have a job where you can pay your bills, but you still want to be able to see your friends when they go out on the weekends, jot that down. Because similar to what JW was saying, my hairdresser was like, I've never had a life as an entrepreneur. And she's like, I got kids, and all I do is tether to this chair and go back home to them. So I'm looking at her like, oh my gosh, and I'm trying to basically get people to write a Black History report on her, right? And she's sitting back, and she's like, I'm in no way professionally fulfilled. And I was like, well, what made you go into this? And she was like, she remembers being young. And back then, she was like, whether it was real or it was image, she felt like every hairdresser was killing it. They were the flyest in the world. They had the best cars. They had whatever. She was like, she's never actually done that. And so when she sits back, she's like, I wish I would have actually talked to somebody. Because we have a habit of saying, this person has it all together. And if you just stop and talk to them, they're like, let me tell you my trauma. Let me tell you my pain. Let me walk you through this, right? Because we all have it. There are a lot of people out here, and we talk about it so openly in this church, and I think it's amazing. I am a huge proponent of mental health, and I low-key would get everybody a therapist if I could, right? Because I think it's important, and we have no idea what we're carrying. So sometimes some of that, I got to get to the next rung. I got to get to the next rung. I got to do this. I always told my ex-husband, my son can't live our lives because he doesn't have our same trauma. So when I work nonstop and when I hustle nonstop and my ex hustles nonstop, we're doing that because there was more of a fear of if I don't hustle nonstop, what's next for my kid? So we can't look at him and say, you're not doing what you need to do. That's not his life. And so I ask you, please, and I talked about it earlier when people try to label your generation, I'm not saying that the labels are inaccurate. I don't want you to hear that. What I am saying is you are more than your generation's label. And you have to remember, whenever you hear labels, they are just broad brush. So don't. Just don't. And my last point is don't shit on yourself. And I always say it that way because you won't forget it. I should have always been here. I should have always done this. I should have always. Yeah, sorry. Yes, yeah, I'm so sorry. It was intentional, sorry.
I was going to say, can you repeat it a little bit slower?
I'm so sorry. I'm so glad I did the examples. I'm super laid back, not that laid back. But don't do it to yourself, because I promise you, as you continue to start thinking you should have done something, you stop loving where you are. And it goes back to what you were saying, like you loved your job. And then all of a sudden when it's like, I should have had the same promotion that person had. I should have had such and such. All of a sudden now you don't sit in gratitude. So pick another word if that doesn't resonate with you. But for me, it's important, don't let, so even if I say it that way, don't let the should that you think should have happened to you derail you from where you are. Because that is so very real. And it's not just about this, it's anything. People, I always tell people, when I'm like, I never ask people, do they make enough money? Everybody always makes enough money until they see what somebody else makes. And then as soon as they see that, what do you think they say? I should have had that, right? And so don't do it. Don't do it. Sit in your joy, sit in your gratitude. It doesn't mean that you are lazy. It doesn't mean that you're sitting back and you're like, then there's nothing for me. No, JW's story is the story. It's, all right, this is what y'all think, I'm gonna do this. Set goals for yourself. And I think it's also what you said, which is very important. Everybody's not meant to be an entrepreneur. Stop looking at others and say, that should have been my life. Your life is your life, and if you decide you want it to be someone else, something else, don't let it be because of what somebody else has or doesn't have. Let it be because you sat back, you talked to God, and you said, yeah, this should be mine. That's it.
So then there was me. So, yes, Howard University, the real HU. It's funny because you talked about how, you were in a fight, and I think I was in a full-fledged wrestling match, because it's sitting here, I was like, am I going to go first or am I going to go last? And I think some of the things I'm going to talk about, I still will, but I think after listening to the other folks on the panel, there's a couple of things I want to say up front. First of all, when you said you've been doing what you did for 37 years, I'm like, man, you were 37 years old, right? Oh, okay, all right. That was the wrestling match. I guess I didn't hear it. But I say that to say, Lisa, can you stand up for a second real quick? That's my wife in the back. We were married 30 years. But let me tell you why I'm telling you that. She hasn't worked full-time since 2001. Malik, Micah, and Zaire, my 3 kids, can y'all stand up? Y'all can sit down. My daughter's saying, Dad, don't say nothing crazy. They've never wanted for anything. All 3 of them went to private school, okay? I've been doing I've been in this world that I'm in for over 30 years. Some of y'all weren't even born in the amount of time that I've been working. And when Lisa called me and said, hey, I want you to be on this panel, like if I could begin to tell you the things that I've accomplished in corporate America, I worked for Xerox, I worked for Pillsbury, I worked for Procter & Gamble. The company I work for now is the 4th largest pharmaceutical company in the world, and it's a $15 billion drug, the one that I sell right now. And that's only one drug, right? Now, I've been in the game for 30-plus years. And a couple of years ago, people were asking me, man, how did you win back-to-back what we call COE, which is the #1 team in the division I'm in, because no one's ever done that before. And I thought about how that happened, and I thought about how I've been able to do all the things, and I only shared what I shared with you just now because there's a whole lot that I could talk about. JW, you made a real good point. Just because we've been married 30 years, just because I've been doing what I've been doing for 30 years, doesn't mean I've been successful. But I do have a successful marriage, and I have been successful in corporate America. But there are some fundamental things that I've done that have put me in this chair. There are some principles, and I had to write it down because it was like, Greg, if you start telling the people what you've accomplished, they might miss it. Because the reality is, when I started, I was a mess. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know anything about being a leader, being promoted. I didn't know that stuff. So I had to try to figure it out as I went. But I can tell you that the short answer to what Lisa asked me when she asked me to speak was, what I realized was with the team that I won those awards with, I realized that it was never about me. I waited 2 years before I told them that. I said, guys, okay, I'm going to tell you all something that's been a secret for me. I said, I want this team to be the best team you've ever worked for and been a part of. And once they realized that, they were like, yo, let's go. Because what I wanted to do was I wanted to create an environment throughout my career, once I figured it out or realized what I needed to do, is I want to be in an environment where people who are really good and skilled at what they do, that they want to do even more for me. They want to do even more for the people on this team. And once I figured that out, I did a business review a couple of weeks ago in front of all of my colleagues, all of our bosses, that boss and their boss. And the biggest thing that I talked about is the culture that I create on my team. In corporate America, a lot of times people talk about culture and business as like they're two separate things. What I realized is that they're really one and the same, because everybody's going to come to work and they're going to bring their uniqueness. But if you can build a culture where people can be the best that they can be, then that's how you really accelerate. So I did write down 5 things. And let me tell you up front, it's not like it's crazy magical. Like you're going to hear and be like, oh, man, you know, that was something from Mars. You know what I mean? Like, no, it's not like that. But these are the things that I realized as I went that really helped me get to where I am today, because that's really what I want today. I'm the dude in the room that hopefully you'll be able to exceed the things that I've seen. And I hope that I don't lose you because you figure, well, yeah, he's older than me. He doesn't know what's going on. The reality is I've been in your chair. I'm the guy still in the room where people are trying to get jobs. I'm like, how am I in that room now? I'm seeing resumes. You know what I mean? So it's like I want you to be able to see a live person who is in the place where you're headed, whether you're an entrepreneur or even working in corporate America. I never thought I would be here, but all praises be to God that I've been able to be in this spot. Because it's really been him, but without me listening to him and really understanding some things along the way. So earlier I talked about treating your job, you know, the one that you have. You have to say on the front end that this is the job that I do, but I want to be more than this. So I've got to really begin to engage this particular work in a way that shows people that I can do more than this. Because when people see you and they see that you're dependable and you're reliable and you can do things beyond your current role, that's how you move forward. That's how I was able to get special projects. I'm like, yo, they asked me to just lead this project for half the country. I'm just a dude from Philly. But they saw that I was reliable, that I could do things, and they knew that, hey, look, if we put this guy in this spot, he can get it done. So people begin to trust you, because it's not just about you. With your generation, with everything being so much about social media and sitting at home and on your phone, it's so isolating. It's so just about you. And I'm telling you, in order for you to get to where you want to be in this life, you are going to need a good group of people around you. So treat your role like it matters early. The second one is relationships matter. They matter. And everybody has talked about, it's not just your talent. It's not just what I can do. I went to Howard, staring him down. Because this is a people business. The company that I'm with now, I actually paved it 10 years before I got there. I was working at a different company, and the person that I was working with actually works for the company that I'm at today. We were account executives. And she and I worked so well together, she got promoted, and I continued to do the work for the company that I was working for. 10 years later, I decided I don't want to work for that company anymore. Somehow or another, she got word that I was looking at another company, and she said, you need to apply to this company, because guess what? She's now a VP. I didn't have to interview. I literally showed up. She walked me through the questions. Where I struggled, she would tell me, hey, no, say this, say that, so she could fill out the form so I could come into a job to continue my career in terms of where I was going. That started 10 years before I got to the company that I'm at now. Why is that important? is because you can't burn bridges along the way. You got to respect everybody. You got to treat people right. Because if you don't, that person who you could be burning the bridge with could literally be the door that's going to close on you. Now, I'm not limiting God. I'm just saying how it paid out for me. I have mentors on this sheet, and I will tell you, I'm 60 years old. I have mentors. You might be thinking, yo, man, what? Somebody still alive past 60? Yeah. Because here's the thing. When you stop learning, I tell my team this today. You don't want to be on my team when you think you know it all. That's a problem. You need to stay a student. You need to be continually learning. It's a lot in this world that makes you, talk about you, and it's all about you, and yada, yada, yada. I'm telling you, let that go. Stay and continue to be a student, because I'm telling you, what you create and who you are is in the room. Right now at my company, just turn the page here, we are right now in the middle of talking about promotions. The names that are going to be on the board, I don't even got to read the slide. When their name pops up, I already know who they are by the things that they've said, the things that they've done. So think about that. There are doors that you want to go through, and before you even go through that door, your brand is already in the room. So you said when you come in the room, we already know who you are before you get there. And that's because of the things that you've said, the things you've done. You really, really, really need to get that generational thing out of your head. You really do, because I think I mentioned to you, there's a reason why at dinner time, me and my two sons are laughing at stuff that's just, and my wife and my daughter are like, man, what's so funny? Because we're dudes. We get it. And the reality is that's a tie that bonds more than others. So don't allow that to get in the way. The other thing is you got to be steady through change. Now, I've been in pharmaceutical business for a long time, and I can tell you when it's good, it's good. I just explained to you why I'm on the largest brand that I've ever worked on. And I can tell you, anybody in this business will tell you, I want to stay in this business long enough to be on a $1 billion drug. This is a $15 billion drug. So it's great, but guess what? They have this thing called LOE, which basically means eventually that patent's going to run out. And when that patent runs out, people might get laid off. Now, I was on the drug before this one where people got laid off. 4 years in a row, in the fall, in November, phone call, sit by your phone and wait for a phone call. So imagine Thanksgiving's coming and you have to sit by a phone to find out if you still have a job. Oh, and oh, by the way, I had to wait, and then I had to call people who didn't, you know what I mean? So thank God, through all that, I've never lost my job, never been laid off. Why is that? Because of some of the things that I'm sharing with you now. So my people as a leader look to me to keep the ship steady. You know what I mean? Like I've always tried to help people to stay focused. I just talked about layoffs. There's also, in the business that I'm in, man, the customers are constantly changing. Today we can get into an office, next week we can't. Business are changing. The government's changing laws. There's all these things that are going on. So I need to be able to lead my team in a way where they're like, look, I can rely on Greg. Not just my team, but also even my colleagues. And after a while, people begin to realize again by watching you, like, yo, man, this is somebody I can count on. This is somebody I can call. Because in this business, there's a lot of change, and your reputation is big. So stay steady during your through change. And the last one, I probably should be holding this, not having it on the floor. So forgive me. My kids were telling me, Dad, don't be up there going on tangents. So the other thing I'll say is build people skills. So there's a whole lot of talent being built, which is great. I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't work on myself. Forever be a student. Always, I said earlier, know your industry, know more about what's going on. But I'm telling you right now, it is people business. Everything. Pastor helped me see a long time ago that, Greg, the stuff you're doing at work is the same thing in the church. That opened my mind up to realize that I need to understand people. So when I told my team that I wanted to have the best team, I wanted this to be the best experience, is because I really understand that it's mindset, it's making people feel valued, it's understanding that everybody has a different gift that they bring to the workplace. Like, that's number one for me. I'm trying to build a team. I'm trying to make sure I understand people. When we call on our customers, I'm trying to understand how they think and why they do what they do. What are the drivers? What are the insights? And with my team, I'm trying to figure out what are the things that make them tick? What do they want to be? Where are they going? Everything I do is about people. So this whole thing about sitting at home, being by yourself, just working on you, and I'm going to be somewhere and whatever, man, that's totally wrong. Part of the reason why people have some of the issues that they have is because you're so busy trying to become something that you ain't got nobody with you. We had a whole men's conference on, check your six, which basically means that you need to have some people that got your back. And everybody's so busy just trying to be the man that you ain't got nobody with you. I told my boys on the break, I've never tried to belong to anything. Well, that came out wrong. I never tried to belong to something to become somebody. I think I fixed that, right, Zai? So what I mean by that is I'm a part of different organizations. I have friends. I have all kinds of networks, right? And I do that because I understand that it takes a village for me and for them. Like you have to realize that everything in this life is about people business. And you got to stop trying to do things all by yourself, on your own. And you do have to be selective. And then the last thing I'm going to say is that this is my last principle, and that is you don't have to compromise your beliefs to get to where you want to go. And that's real hard, because the reality is that I've been in a lot of situations in my career where I could have said some things, I could have gone to some places, I could have done some things. Especially as you begin to move up and you get a lot of supposed power, you get a lot more responsibility. But the reality is that when you have Jesus in your heart, you got to check yourself. You know what I mean? And if you want to become somebody either entrepreneurially or in corporate America, you can get there and not have to put other people down. You don't need to be in the workplace backstabbing folks and putting people down. You don't need to talk bad about your competition. You know what I mean? We try to talk more about what we have, product and services, than to bash other stuff. There's certain places I don't go. And you ain't got to walk around with a tambourine singing gospel music in the workplace. But when you act a certain way, Jesus said when you show love, they're going to know who you are, right? Like, so my thing is that there are people in the workplace that when they cuss around me, they're like, oh, man, I'm sorry. And I'm thinking, why they just, oh, yeah, that's right, because they kind of see how I roll. You know what I mean? So you don't have to compromise anything. If there's anything that you take from anything that I've said, there's really two. One of them is that I hope you see the other side of everybody who's talked so far. I told you I'm 60 years old, but I talked about what I won a couple of years ago. If you call my people on the team right now, they would tell you, what our goal is this year? To be the #1 team in pulmonology. I work with winners. I create winners. I have a culture that people want to be a part of. I'm 60. So what I want you to see is that everybody that's 60 ain't dead yet, right? And I got 5 years, I think. I say I think because I enjoy what I do so much. I enjoy what I do so much, I don't know if I'm going to stop. So y'all got to see that there's a lot of lies out there that keep you from asking questions and staying coachable when it comes to people that are a little bit older than you. Look, John started with my generation, not yours. We were saying John in the 80s. So I don't know where that came from, but you get my point, right? So anyway, so in the end, you really got to live by certain principles to be successful. So that's it. That's all I got.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for that. I actually took notes on some of the things that each panelist said that really stood out, and I'm hoping maybe you can expand more. I would actually want to ask Pamela to expand on the I should have. And the reason I wanted to touch on that is that not everyone is in corporate, right? We have people in other fields. And sometimes the I should have, I feel like, is something that across career or across even being a business owner, all of us are dealing with this whole thing of timeline, right? And I should have. This is what I expected to have at 30. This is where I thought I would be at 19. And I think even across generations, we have, younger folks, because of social media and things being expedited, they feel more pressure for things to be done at a certain age compared to the older generation where you were kind of conditioned to wait things out, to rise, and you're in one field, you're in a company, and okay, I'm gonna start off here, intro, work my way, climb up. But I think across, everyone has dealt with the whole thing of I should have. And so I would really love for you, and if anyone on the panel also can expand on that, how do you navigate the I should have across career or just in life?
So, thank you. The I should have, as it relates professional, that is newer, because there was a patience that existed before about doing our time before we moved on. However, I'd be remiss not to say I should have across life. That's always been a thing. So whether it was women believing they should have been married by a certain age, or they should have had babies by a certain age, or they should have stayed married because their parents did, or they should have had 2 kids but they only had 1. The I should have isn't new. The way that you navigate it, and the joy is you all are here as seeds. So whether or not you all are members, I am of the belief that you're believers. So with that being said, you won't stop the I should haves because you're a human. What you can stop is how deep that hole goes. And so whenever I find myself being like, that's not really my thing, so that's not true. But like whether it's the I should haves or it's something else where you find yourself going in a hole, my recommendation is call it by name, recognize it, don't try to run from it. The worst thing you can do is know that you're spiraling in a certain space, but then deny it. Because 9 times out of 10, you're the only one who knows it, which means it's only impacting you. So once you find yourself starting to go down that path, call it by name, and literally out of your mouth, whatever it may be, say, we're not doing that today. And it's going to stop. It doesn't mean it won't come back. What it means is that you'll start to take more and more control. And once you start to focus more on yourself, and you all seen it online, it is very hard to get enough protein, drink enough water, get to the gym, take care of everything you need to do, and worry about other people at the same time. That's a lot to do. So if you really just start focusing on the things that you need to do to be better, inevitably the rest of it, it becomes harder. Not impossible. Again, you're humans, give yourself grace. But do just stop when you're going through and being able to say, I'm not doing this today.
Yeah, and then when he should have gotten to Hampton but couldn't. So I always say it's like one thing I've lived my life like even in my marriage. I tell my wife, our marriage, I'm accountable to God first. So I make my decisions based off my relationship with God that covers you in our relationship, right? But also it's a very strong thing whether you're in corporate America, because I live both lives. Life and death is in the power of the tongue. Right? So if you speak that over anything you do, you should have, like, you don't know that path you were going down, God redirected you. It's sometimes everybody's been driving cars for a while here. I'm like, dang, why didn't I go on 95 to get down to Seeds of Greatness? Why did he take me 202? That way is long. But he avoided something that we shouldn't have taken in that path. And I think that, like, there's times because an entrepreneurship run, right? You have to be careful as you elevate, making sure that what our intentions are to surround you, right? And also, you got to think about every opportunity. I said, all money isn't good money. We turn down clients if the energy is not right, because this, and I always say this, is with everybody, you got to think your time is the most important thing you have, right? For the things you say I should have done, you weren't necessarily ready to do that yet, and God didn't prepare the table for you yet. So I always say is speak life into yourself, and life will happen. There's one thing, and it's a book I'm reading, is, does everybody familiar with eagles, right? Right? You familiar with chickens, right? What does eagles do very well, and what do they look forward to? Storms, because storms help them soar. Chickens run, right? So as you're elevating yourself in life, just be the godly eagle that soars when the storm comes. But what happens is your wings are far. That means that's the covering of your church, the covering of your parents, the covering of your community. Because if anybody says they do it on their own, it's crazy. Like, we're growing as a company because we care about the people that help us build the company, right? And I say, as y'all building yourself, selfishness can come out very quickly when success shows up. You know? So you have to balance that stuff, but the way you regulate is to be around like-minded people that help you regulate that stuff. Because if anybody says it hasn't creeped up a little bit, they're probably not really telling you the truth. So that's all I kind of have, and I know the Howard guy's about to speak.
So real quick, I wasn't going to, but when JW mentioned the whole thing about chickens, I've had my fair share of shouldas, and when you talked about worshiping or relying on your company, I didn't understand that I actually did that at one point in my career, and I tell people now that God had that company bought by the worst company I've ever worked for, not necessarily in that order, but I stayed there too long because I began to believe that that was my source. But he helped me endure where I went when I was in the valley with this other company, and that wasn't good money. But at that point in my career, it was the most money I had ever made. So think about it. I was with a company that I thought I was going to retire with, who I thought was my source, was bought by a company that was the worst experience I've had in my career, where I made the most money. The reason why I'm saying what I'm saying is because a lot of the reasons why you end up saying I shoulda is because you were afraid. And I was afraid to go somewhere else. And my wife used to tell me, why are you staying at this company, yada, yada, yada. I was like, no, I'm good, but for real, I was afraid. And what I can tell you is that even though you may have some wouldas and shouldas in your life, God is a restorer, like you were alluding to. Like, you may decide to go left when he wanted you to go right, but that's all right. He loves you, and through his grace and mercy, he has a plan for you, and you're going to be all right.
Thank you so much.